What's up everyone? It's been a little while since I've made a GH5 settings video similar to this, so I thought I'd make a new addition. And really this video is all about getting the most cinematic experience while shooting video with the Panasonic GH5. If you're new here, my name is Caleb and I've been doing freelance video production since 2012, but this channel is to help you make your own videos, whether you just started or you've been making them for a while, whether you use the GH5 or any other camera. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you've heard me say so many times that the GH5 really is like a cinema style camera without actually being a cinema style camera. So even though it's 2021, maybe you just got a Panasonic GH5 or maybe you've had one for a little while and you want to go just a little bit further in how to set it up and get the most cinematic experience while shooting video. But these are just some settings that help me get the best video experience out of the GH5. So one of the first things that I'm gonna do is actually set the shutter angle. Now, a lot of times you're shooting with a shutter speed on other cameras, but the GH5 actually has in a shutter angle that you can set. Now, you know that with the shutter angle, with the shutter speed, it needs to be double the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, your shutter speed needs to be around 50. But on the GH5 and the shutter angle, any frame rate that you shoot at, it's going to automatically double it so that you don't have to worry about making sure you make those changes. Like let's say you jump to 60 frames per second, you don't have to worry about the shutter angle or the shutter speed because it's already going to be set. All right, so to set the shutter angle, we're actually going to go into the first menu item and we're just going to scroll down to where it says SS gain operation. And we're going to click on that, and normally it'd probably be right up here with the speed, the seconds, but we're actually going to switch it to the angle right there. And then you'll have 180 down here where your shutter speed would normally be. So with this angle set, any frame rate that you shoot at, the shutter speed is going to automatically double. So you don't even have to worry about making sure you have your shutter speed set right. All right, the second thing that we're going to go in and do is we're actually going to go to the system frequency, and we're going to take a look at the system frequency, which is under the second wrench on the third page, depending on what edition of software you have on your GH5. Sometimes some of these menu items get added, or I don't know, maybe taken away. I'm not totally sure. But right now I have mine set at the NTSC, and like a lot of times the system frequency is going to depend on the area of the world you're at. So if you're in Europe or Africa and you're watching this, parts of Asia, you might be shooting at the 50 Hertz, the PAL version. I'm in North America. South America, a lot of times it's the NTSC, and that Hertz rate is going to be that 5994. Now, the GH5 does have another option, which is the cinema option, which is going to give you a straight 24 frames per second. But let's switch that, and we have to actually turn it off and then turn it back on to make sure that system frequency is set. And actually it's going to give us a straight 24 frames per second, not a 23.98. But what this is going to do is we're actually, if you're maybe like a 30 frames per second shooter, you're actually going to lose those 30 frames per second options. So if we go to record quality, everything's going to be in the 24 frames per second. You still have some of these great options like the Cinema 4K, the 4K All-I, 400 megabytes per second, but you do lose those 30 frames per second options if you are a 30 frames per second shooter. Now, a majority of the time I am shooting in 23.98. I'll jump to this 24 every once in a while, and I've been using that 23.98 frame rate a lot more because there have been times where I've had to jump into that 30 frames per second, and that way I just have it set and I can use that 23.98 or the 29.98, whatever that is, for those different shoots. So I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to change that system frequency back to the NTSC. All right, now that you have that set, one of the things that you're going to want to pay attention to are the record quality settings. Now, I did a whole video on these record quality settings that you can check up right up at the top, but let's just quickly go through some of these options that you're going to have. So in the menu, you go to like the second menu option, and then you have record quality, and this is where you're going to find all of those different record quality options that you may want to explore and try. Now, some of these you're gonna have to have a very powerful computer to process, like the Cinema 4K All-I, 400 megabytes per second. That's gonna be a beefy file that not a lot of computers can handle. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you have a very powerful computer to kind of process those. So one of the things that you're gonna notice is the difference between the 10-bit color and the 8-bit color. So 10-bit color is just gonna be a little bit deeper of a color, and it's gonna reduce some of the banding that you see in the image sometimes with 8-bit color, especially in sky scenes or sometimes even in skin. So you're gonna have 10-bit and 8-bit color. Another thing that you're gonna see is the 4K 60 option, 8-bit. So that's actually gonna be a 60 frames per second file. Then another option you're gonna see down here is the 4K 8-bit, 100 megabytes per second. And what this is gonna do is actually provide the variable frame rate. So if you shoot this or full HD, 1920 by 1080 at 8-bit, you'll be able to go up to 180 frames per second on the variable frame rate. The 4K option allows you to go up to 60 frames per second on the variable frame rate. So let's just set that. Now we have that set at the 4K 8-bit, 100 megabytes per second, 420, 8-bit, and then we're gonna go into set the variable frame rate, and that's gonna process a slow motion file in camera so that you already have it ready to go. You don't need to go and modify any of the frame rates in your editor. So to get to the variable frame rate, we're just gonna go to the first menu option, and we're just gonna turn this on, or let's go ahead and set it, and then we can go here and just set it to 60 frames per second. And it's the record frame rate is gonna be that 23.98 like we set, you know, with the system frequency and the frame rate that we're shooting in. But here we're gonna have a processed slow motion file. All right, so we have frame rates taken care of. And now what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna go and we're gonna adjust the ISO settings. In here, we're gonna go to this wrench right here, and we're gonna go to the exposure and the ISO increments. We're actually gonna switch that to a third, which I already have right here, but we're gonna switch it. It'll probably come as 1, but we're gonna switch it to a third EV, and that's gonna be like third increments. So you're just gonna be able to kind of dial in those ISO settings, kind of fine tune them a little bit so it's not such big jumps in between the ISO levels. You'll be able to kind of adjust those in increments. So if we go to the ISO, you can see that right now it moves in thirds rather than like 100 to 200. You have 125, 160, and then 200. So then 250, 320, and then 400. So you're just gonna be able to kind of dial in those ISO settings and really help adjust that exposure that you're gonna need. So let's go in and take a look at some of the color profiles that we're able to shoot with on the GH5. And with the color profiles, you're actually gonna find those under the second menu item, and then it's on the first page and it's gonna say photo style, just hit that. Now, a lot of times, like for my YouTube videos, also for some client work, I'm actually shooting in the natural color profile because I like the colors that I'm getting out of it, and it actually saves some time when it comes to editing. So here's the settings that I use for the natural color profile: -2, -5, 0, -1. And then for interviews, I use -1 on the hue. For B-roll, I might take that back to 0. Lately, I've just kind of been keeping it at -1. Just because I don't have to go back and change it all the time. But that's what I would be using with the natural color profile, and I really like the colors that come out. And if you wanna check out my natural color profile confession video, I'll have that linked right up here. But another good option for shooting some great video on the GH5 would be the built-in Cine D option that comes on the camera when you purchase it. And for the Cine D, when I shoot Cine D, which is not actually very often, but here's some of the settings that I'm using for the Cine D: -1, -5, 0, -1, 0. You can purchase a light version of the Vlog called Vlog L. That is, it comes in a box and that you have to upload to the GH5. It's whatever. For Vlog L, I don't change any of the settings. If you want to learn more about some of the color profiles more in depth, I do have a video that you can check out right up here. Now, one of the things you might want to explore if you're shooting Vlog is that the GH5 actually does have a Vlog assist option. So let's set this to Vlog, and then we're going to go into this first menu item, and it's going to be on the second page, and it's actually going to be Vlog L View Assist. And what that's gonna do is you're able to either upload your own LUT to the GH5, or it has the LUT select and you can select like a Rec 709. So that's just gonna help a little bit, you know, seeing the image in Vlog, because Vlog is so flat. Sometimes it's hard to see like where focus is or what's really exposed, what's not exposed. So one of the great cinematic features of the GH5 are all of the exposure tools that you have built into the camera that you don't have to have another monitor. If you want to see a more detailed video about some of those exposure tools, you can check out that video right up top that's popping up. But real quick, let's just go through some of the exposure tools that I use that I find very helpful when shooting video. And the first is going to be the histogram right here. So these little lines, you can kind of tell the overall exposure in the image. So to get the histogram up on the screen, let's go to the menu and we're going to go to this first wrench, and we're actually going to go to monitor and display, because that's going to put some of those features up on this monitor for us to see. So the histogram is right there. You can turn it on or turn it off. And if you turn it on, you can kind of place it anywhere on the screen. So I kind of like it kind of right over there, right above the audio bars. And so we're gonna have that set. So another option that we're gonna want on this screen is gonna be the zebra pattern. Make sure you check out my color profile video, because that's gonna tell you some of the levels that I keep these zebra stripes at on the different color profiles. But with the natural, I'll just tell you right now, with the natural, I actually have zebra 2 set at 95, zebra 1 at 70. So that's just gonna show where these parts of the image are gonna start blowing out, being overexposed. You're gonna get stripes on it, and it will be very easy to see how to expose your image with those zebra patterns. And then one of the other things that you're gonna wanna take full advantage of is the built-in waveform and vectorscope on the GH5. And to get that, we're actually gonna go back into the menu to the first option, and right down at the bottom of the first page is the waveform and vectorscope. And so what we can do is pick one of those to have on the screen, and that's gonna help you really dial in your exposure without having a separate monitor. And that's what's so great about the GH5 are these built-in exposure tools. So let me tell you this real quick. One of the things, like, you're not gonna want that up on the screen all the time. So one of the things that I did is actually set one of my function buttons. You can customize all these buttons on here, and I set this function 4 button as my vectorscope waveform button. So I just press that and I can automatically have it right on there, and then it'll pop up at any time that I need it. Now, if you're shooting Vlog, you're gonna wanna take full advantage of that waveform to make sure you have your levels correct. One of the other features I find super helpful is actually the focus peaking. So what we're gonna do is go back in here, and we're actually going to go back up to the 5th page of the first wrench, and we're going to go to peaking. And so what this is gonna do is actually add some color around what you have in focus. So it's gonna be way easier to tell what's in focus on your image. And so you can kind of set it, you can set like the different color if you want it high or low. I like it on high because I like seeing what is in focus, and I wanna make sure I have the focus dialed in. Hopefully focus is dialed in here. So one of the things that we all know is that the autofocus on the GH5 is absolutely horrible. So if you're pulling focus with this, especially if you're not using a native lens, you might wanna consider using the manual focus assist on the GH5. And to get there, we're just gonna go to this focus option under the first wrench. And on the first page, second page, third page of that focus option is we're gonna go to manual focus assist. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna punch in the image. When you turn that focus ring, it's gonna punch in the image so that you can really see what's in focus. So you can just kind of drag or use the joystick to kind of move the little box around, and then you can really see and make sure everything is in focus that you want in focus. So it just kind of punches the screen in a little bit and helps with that manual focus, because we're not using autofocus, so we need to make sure that things are in focus when we shoot. So this was just a quick overview of some of the settings I'm using right now to get the most cinematic experience shooting video on the GH5. If you have anything that you would add, make sure you comment those things below. I'd love to get a conversation started about some of the settings that you're using on the GH5 to get the best video experience. Now, if you have time, it'd be awesome if you maybe stuck around, watch one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you in the next video.